Before we go on with Dave and Carla, and we chat about their books, The Gift of Past Lives and Hell No, Reincarnation, I want to take a moment and thank them for coming on. And I want to apologize to all of you for the sound. I think somewhere either I had a setting wrong or I don't know what I did. Anyways, it's still learning, and remember, I'm an ape. So it sounds like we are coming from the inside of an aluminum can, not a tin can, an aluminum can. But it was a super fun show. Dave and Carla are extremely gracious to and easy to talk to, and that made it very fun, and I could I could joke around and enjoy it. But enjoy the show. Go ahead and do that.
Oh, I've seen a flying saucer.
You've seen one?
Yes, definitely.
Unidentified aerial phenomena.
To cover up our mistakes.
I've met people who swear they've seen Bigfoot.
Join us for a journey into the obscure.
You are now listening to The Wow Pod.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Betsy is not here in studio tonight because she is in Nashville.
Coming to you from Nashville today.
Yes, but we have an exciting interview tonight.
Yes, welcome to the show.
Yes, welcome to the show. Tonight
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on. Tonight we have David Bettenhausen. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. I really got it first try.
First try.
That is shocking. And Carla Bogni-Kidd. Is Bogni correct?
Oh my God. That's correct. You did it.
You must be inspired, Jared.
I'm very inspired tonight. So, now, David and Carla, they'll tell us their story here in a minute, but they've wrote a couple of books, and we've talked about this stuff on the show before with a couple of people, but they have a vast experience with past life regression or just remembering their past lives and kind of their past lives together. So let's call out their books real quick. The Gift of Past Lives, and it says with Mother Isabella, God and Elizabeth. Now, are those family members that are?
One is a family member. God, of course, I guess we could say is family to all of us.
He's the family member. But yeah.
Yes.
And the other one is Hell No, Reincarnation. And that's an interesting name. Hell No, Reincarnation. That kind of leads to a couple of different thoughts, like there is no hell, there's reincarnation, or also
Hell no to reincarnation.
or even hell no, reincarnation. You know, that's I don't know.
There's a question mark on that.
There's a question mark on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of the sentence. It could lead down multiple thought ways.
Couldn't it? Yes.
I like that. So on the first book, on the Gift of Past Lives. So you two lived 700. Okay, how did two real life people living 750 miles apart end up meeting in this life? Not just once, but twice. And I want you guys to tell that story. I think that story is very neat.
First, let's learn a little bit about you individual. Like, who were you before you met?
Oh yeah.
Because I think it's interesting to think how much your paradigm shifted once you all got together and were able to like kind of hammer this out.
Dave, you want me to go?
Yeah, go for it, Carla.
All right,
Your
well,
child.
okay. I mean, I was raised in Boston, the youngest of 5 girls. Parents got divorced. That's when the whole Catholic to Mormonism thing took place. We ended up moving from Boston out to Michigan, and then to Ohio. And I had a couple of marriages under my belt, and asked myself frequently, what's the purpose? What am I here for? Isn't there more? There has to be more. And Tom, my husband, would say, nah, you know, your mother raised you to just keep busy all the time, and you just need to relax and not worry about it. But there was something that just stuck with me all the time. I felt like there was more. And when I was 40 or thereabouts, no, I'm sorry, I was about 38 when I married Tom. And in 1998, when I was 40, Tom sold his practice to a much younger man than I. He was 39, Dave Bettenhausen, who had been doing his residency in Toledo. And we met during that transaction, and we became instant friends. Dave, what do you want to add?
So I grew up in the most normal, comfortable little Catholic family in Nebraska. And I went away to school to become a pharmacist, didn't like it, graduated as a nurse, worked in Open Hearts as a nurse for 10 years, and really wanted to do something else, so I went back to medical school. Ended up at a residency in Toledo, Ohio, so I was in Ohio and got connected to Tom and finally bought his practice, which was over 20 years ago now. And Carla came with the practice and as the office manager, and she stayed ever since, and we've become best of friends. Now, what becomes interesting is 6 or 7 years ago when we started electronic medical records, it was overwhelming. It changed the medical office. We went from paper and it became just completely different. And I've always been, yes, we're old. And I've always been kind of happy-go-lucky. And practicing became drudgery, and I became very unhappy. I was going through a divorce also and had some issues there. And so there was nothing happy in my life. And Carla came in and asked me one day if I wanted to try meditation. And
so you were looking for meditation just to kind of relax and to center, yeah.
You know, and as a physician, even as we were doing it, we did a lot of research, and there was all sorts of health benefits and positive things. And this is just a side note, but the first year that I meditated, I lost 116 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And then that's part of and we taught some meditation classes after.
I'm meditating tonight, Betsy.
So, okay.
It drops cortisol levels, makes you lose weight.
So I'm going to stop you right there, because how do you meditate right? Because let me tell you, I've tried. I can't get into that headspace.
I've tried, and I haven't lost any weight yet. How do I make this happen?
It's hard for me to. I don't know. I guess I just keep spinning and spinning and spinning, and as I'm sitting there trying to meditate, I'm like, okay, so have I paid the gas bill, and is that water dripping upstairs?
Yes.
Did I actually start the dryer?
That's normal, Betsy. That's how it was for me in the beginning. Not everybody has Dave's gift where they can just close their eyes and connect. I still have to really focus, but it takes me a good 20 minutes to quiet myself to get there. It takes practice.
Yes. I'll just have to
And
keep
That's
my,
what
if
I'm
it's,
worried about.
yeah,
But
if it's good for weight loss, I'm in. I'll
yeah, it was a
practice.
great experience, and so we
Tell
started
her
to
why it was
meditate.
good for weight loss, Dave.
Okay, it's good for weight loss for lots of different reasons. First of all, if you become self-aware, you do start to see what you're eating and what you're doing. The next thing is it actually scientifically has been proven that it reduces cortisol, which is that hormone that helps you hold on to weight. We got so many of us in the country that have issues with that. It also reduces stress, and stress increases cortisol, which also makes you gain weight. So when you have something new happening or changes and different things in your life, certainly your stress level goes up, your cortisol level goes up, and the weight starts to go on. So it can be very helpful. It also lowers blood sugar, lowers blood pressure, makes you more alert and able to do your job. There's a lot of big Fortune 500 companies that now do meditation for their employees because it does make them better employees. Then comes our story, which changes things up for us a lot. You know, the first day I meditated, I thought it was just great. Here I got to shut off all these computers and all this stuff that was driving me crazy. When it was over, I jumped up and felt better running down the hall to see patients. The next day it was that way. The third day while I was meditating, I saw a woman. And I was like talking to her, at least trying to talk to her. And she was this happy-go-lucky woman. She was jovial. She kept trying to show me a shoe. When she was looking off to the side, it looked like Carla's eyes from a side view. And again, I'm a physician, so I thought, I'm having some sort of hallucinatory, crazy thing. But I went up to Carla afterwards and I said, Carla, I know you'll think it's crazy, but I think I was talking to your mother. What's interesting is her mother had died 20 years ago. And of a brain tumor. And I didn't know a lot about her, but I said she was showing me this shoe and she was talking, and I could see that she looked like you from the side view because of the eyelashes. And what'd you do, Carla?
Well, he had my attention. First of all, I was a lot more open-minded than Dave. My first question was, well, why is she coming to you and not me? I mean, I'm sitting here meditating too. So I that. But as soon as he said shoe, ding, 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 a bell went off because my mother was a ballroom dancer. And she always wore a certain open-toed sandal her entire life. And she didn't wear it just for dancing. She'd wear it like for church or she was dressing up. So I went over to the computer and I brought up ballroom shoes. And I said, which one? And there were like 60 pair on the screen. And he chose the exact shoe. And my sister also worked in the office with us, and we both looked at each other like, okay, that is not just a good guess. How could he have gotten that? So then it went from there, and he started telling us what she was saying. And then the patients came in, so we had to stop what we were doing. And all day long, we were like, oh, we want to get back and do this. Who else can we talk to?
Oh.
So that experience sort of started to change things a little bit. A few more days later, and this other woman showed up that I'm talking to. And she tells me her name is Isabella. So now you're getting where the book, part of the title in the book comes in.
Okay.
And Isabella is talking to me and says, Dave, I've been with you for 6,000 years as your spirit guide.
So Isabel is your spirit guide. Now we've learned about them, or I guess learned about them or talked about them on our other shows we've had with Heather and Indigo.
Yes. And so that was pretty exciting because I'm like, every day when I meditate, Isabella starts to tell me something and is telling me a story. And she's giving me different lessons and things like that. And then there's a day when Isabella takes me to a memory. And the memory is from 1962. Now I'm giving away my age a little bit, but in 1962, she reminds me that I was in Boston. Now, Carla's from Boston originally. I was from Nebraska. In 1962, my father went to graduate school in Boston. I was a 3-year-old boy. We got in the car and we drove all the way across the country. I don't remember a whole lot from Boston. I remember this little student housing place that had, this lady gave me cookies. I remembered that during the memory, but I didn't remember a lot, except I remembered going to the beach.
So you remember cookies and the beach, what every
And
3-year-old
the beach, so you get that. And so I remembered running on the beach. And as I'm running on the beach, suddenly I hear this little girl yell, "Stop screaming, you're bothering my family." She runs out, she pushes me down, she sits on my chest, she plants a kiss on my forehead, she jumps up, puts both hands on her hips, looks at me kind of frowning, and she has on this little purple two-piece bathing suit.
Purple?
Or not
Purple?
blue, sorry. Blue, I got off the story.
Where'd that
Yes,
come from?
a little two-piece blue bathing suit with ruffles and a little pot belly. I like to tell the pot belly part.
Oh,
And I hear in the background, "Carla, that's not how little ladies act."
Huh.
hmm.
And so
We
years
think
later,
that's interesting. And then Carla goes, "You know what, Dave, that was me."
oh my.
I didn't need meditation to remind me. I remember it that day
You
like it
remember?
was yesterday because I was 4, much older. But
Uh-huh.
my parents were always getting separated and back together. But that particular day, we didn't have a car. We were not well off. We rented 2 cabs, and all 7 of us went to Revere Beach. And he described this beach, and we knew exactly where it was. Revere Beach had an amusement park with it, and it was very distinct. You could see the Ferris wheel in the background. And when we got there, for whatever reason, I didn't have a bathing suit. And normally I would have inherited one from one of my older sisters, being the youngest. So the 7 of us went across the street to one of those little souvenir shops, and I got my first brand new blue ruffled bathing suit. And by the way, he had a pot belly too back then. So we always,
A little baby fat is all, just baby fat.
yeah, little baby fat. But I remembered that day because my family was together. I got a new bathing suit. That didn't happen. My parents really couldn't afford to buy that bathing suit, but they did. So when he said that, that was one of those moments, chills up the back.
So that was kind of a big day for you also, in an overall way, because amongst your parents' turmoil, that had kind of been solved for whatever period of time. But also you got something that wasn't a hand-me-down, which
That's right.
I'm sure you thought was the most beautiful thing on earth at the time.
Oh, and it was 2-piece. My mother never
Oh,
allowed a 2-piece
just
bathing suit, but they didn't have the
fancy
choice.
back,
At the
especially.
souvenir shop, we had to wear the 1-piece bathing suits to be good little girls.
Mm-hmm.
There I was,
So-
a little 4-year-old floozy.
Yeah, all good. And so,
So you share this experience with Carla, and Carla, you immediately recognize that this is you.
Yes.
Mm.
So are you guys at this point like making some serious connections? Like, what in the heck is going on between us?
we're
Not
wondering,
yet.
because there's 36 years between those 2 times, that we met, and I somehow got from Nebraska through medical school all the way to Ohio, and walked in and bought a practice, and Carla was there, and it was again 16 years later till we shared that same memory. And it
So
was
That
brought
is
on by
crazy.
So you
brought it
guys have
on by
been
the
working
meditation.
together for 16 more years. And
before we shared it.
and then this story came up, and the story was kind of led to by your spirit guide.
Correct. So we knew there's some sort of connection.
I want to talk about spirit guides for a minute.
Sure.
Carla, do you have a spirit guide that you interact with?
Yes, her name is Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth.
Okay, there we go. Now, in other chats we've had, the Heather has talked about kind of, I think she put it as tribes, correct, Betsy? That you're kind of in a tribe.
For lack of a better way to kind of group people together.
Yeah.
Soul families.
Yeah.
Soul groups.
Okay. And sometimes now is the spirit guide a part of that tribe that maybe isn't incarnated at this time, that is maybe assisting from the other side, or is that entity?
They always are on the other side, Jared.
Well, yeah, but I mean, is that entity, that's all they are, or
that's all they are, and they're connected. Now, you may have some other guides that we've discovered over time that have had lives. The spirit guide is a direct connection to God. So the spirit guide is always there, just like angels are always there.
So, lack of a better word, it's an angel.
It's maybe that guardian angel or
a messenger,
whatever you want to call it. They call themselves spirit guides, or at least that's what Isabella does.
But we have angels too.
Yeah, we have angels too.
Okay, guardian angels type. Well, most people do. Those of us that were an ape 45 years ago may not.
I'm sure you have one. So, as the story goes, so not only am I getting these messages from Isabella, there comes another day where I have a memory. And this is really before that, I'm seeing glimpses of things. I saw a Civil War scene. I saw this Mayan temple. I saw a bunch of stuffed squirrels one day. I'm telling hieroglyphics. I'm telling the girls in the office what I'm seeing. And it's not really connected to anything till there's a day when I suddenly have a memory and I'm standing in an alley. And I'm standing there in the alley, and suddenly a big bright light goes off, and I know I'm being shot, and I get hit in the chest, and I thump back, and I fall on the floor, and I look across the alley, and standing in the alley is Carla. Now,
much younger and hotter, Carla.
Yes. She's 21 or 20 years old, and she's blonde, flapper, and she's standing over there, and there's men around her with guns, and they've just shot me, and I'm looking up at the light, and I can see the light start to darken, and I know I'm going to die. And I shared this with them, and then I shared the next day. I had more memories, and I remembered meeting this flapper, and I met the flapper at the wedding of a mobster named Angelo.
Okay, now let me real quick go through what a flapper is for any of the listeners who don't know. Flapper girl was in the roaring 20s. They would wear a dress. It was usually fairly, for today's standards, it was extremely modest. But back then, it would be about...
Showed your knees.
Yes.
Showed your knees and your arms a little bit.
It would be just above the knees. Usually it had no sleeves on it. But the big thing about it, it would have either frills or tassels, I guess, for lack of a better word, really small tassels that were sewn. Yeah, they were sewn horizontally all the way down the dress, so that in the style of dance in those days, the dress was really energetic when they would dance. The dress would dance. So they called them flapper girls, and they usually cut their hair shorter back in those days because it was rebellious. It was the rebellious spirit of the 20s, just coming out of World War I. So, all right, go on.
Perfect. And so we met at this wedding, and I knew we met at a wedding, and I knew it was in Chicago. I knew that I had met with this flapper again after the wedding. She'd introduced herself as Ruby Donaldson. And I came in, and I knew my name was JJ. And I came and told Carla, it looked like you, it was you, I know it was you. It was in the 1920s. We met at a wedding in Chicago of a mobster named Angelo. and Carla went out and started doing research.
I wanted some proof. So on a day when I was at home, I got on to Ancestry.com and I found Ruby Donaldson, born in 1904 in Bullock, Georgia, to James and Anna Donaldson, one of 11 children. And then I found newspaper articles from January the 10th, 1925, when the gangster Angelo Genna was married to Lucille Spinola in Chicago. He was the big boss of the of Little Italy right before Al Capone. I never heard of him, but the other article I found was a picture of their wedding cake that was over 10 feet tall. It showed people standing next to it. It served over 3,000 people, mostly mobsters. And so I called Dave real quick and I said, I found this and this and this and this. So whatever you're hearing, it's got to be real because I found it.
Oh, now I just want to take a minute. Imagine being the baker who was assigned by the head mobster to cook and transport a 10-foot tall cake. I'll bet that guy.
You bake it on scene.
Yeah.
Bake it, add it to the stack. Bake it, add it to the stack.
Yeah.
I'll bet that guy couldn't have squeezed a needle through himself. I'll bet he was puckered up tight.
3,000 monsters, yes.
Oh, yeah. He's sitting there going, first of all, I mean, if someone told me, bake a single sheet cake, I'm like, this is going to show up messed up. Say I'm a professional baker, and they say, make me a cake that has 2 foot tall. I'm nervous because I'm like, I'm going to tumble this. It's top heavy. It has to be pyramid shaped for me to get it there. 10 foot tall? And that cake has to be, I'll bet it has to weigh 200, 300 pounds.
Yeah, there's no way they want to do that either, Jared.
Oh,
I agree.
Man. I'd have told him, I'll tell you what, I'll bake you 100 1-foot tall cakes. But anyway, sorry. So, sorry to interrupt. I just.
It's okay, Jared. We like the breakup.
Yeah.
So,
well, you mentioned the Mayan, like a Mayan temple. I'm real interested in that. What was that like? What was the experience when you witnessed a past life there?
Well, I did go to that past life, and it's one of the most horrific past lives that we have.
Well, they had to feed the sun god, so the sun god would keep rising every day.
You got it, and I was a
Dave, wait a minute before you go any further. So
Sure.
we got to the point where we meditated every day in the office in the morning before we got started, and everything we saw, I saw very little. I'm not gifted like Dave, but everything we saw or Dave heard, we journaled. And he started to see like the Mayan temple, stuffed squirrels, different things. And then he came in one day and he kept crying. And I said, what is the matter? And he said, I've got to tell you this story. And I'm like, well, calm down. And he just kept crying. He was so upset. And he said, I don't want you to think any differently about Tom. Tom's my husband. And I'm like, okay. And then he starts to tell me this story. Go ahead, Dave.
And this is the Mayan story. Yes, Tom, because again, talk about soul groups. There's many times people in these lives that we find. So Tom was a Mayan priest. We prayed, if you want to call it that we were always at war because every year the sun would get to a certain point and we had to do a sacrifice. And if we were at war, it was great because we would capture some prisoner from the other side. We would tie them over an altar. He would literally come in, rip out their hearts, and bleed into this stone statue. It was a horrific thing to see. Unfortunately, what happened is when there were no war going on, then they took young virgins of the area, small young children. They didn't kill them, but they came in, tied them over the altar, and they bled their arms through these long spikes and bled into a bowl and fed it to the sun god.
kind of like IVs. The long spikes were
We're like IVs, sort
like
of. Yeah,
tubes.
and I didn't even know any of this existed, but we found that in Mayan history because we went back and did some little bit of research on. They used these long porcupine spines and they would drive them into the skin and it would make them bleed. And I didn't know any of those things existed, so it was a horrific story. Now it's also an interesting story because Carla was one of the little girls. And so when you have those kind of experiences, you know that there's some past lives that are not so exciting. There was the Ruby and JJ story, and it became a sort of a personal story for us because I came in one day and I was telling Carla more of the memories and I'm having the conversation. And that's when things started to get very real because during the conversation, I literally felt like I became JJ. And I'm telling Carla our conversation, and Carla started to finish my sentences and was having the same memories.
So you guys kind of started channeling the past in real time.
In real time.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
and it's happened a few other times. We did finally, years later, we went and got past life regression training because this was all happening spontaneously. But we had lives and Carla would start asking questions and we didn't realize that we were sort of doing what past life regression therapists do, but there's a life when I'm an 8-year-old boy and I started to talk and Carla was taking notes and taping it and I started to stutter in the middle of the conversations. And I'm telling her the story and I stuttered all the way through the story. There's a time when I'm a black indentured servant and I'm speaking and suddenly it's in Bermuda and I have a slightly British accent. It's a little surly and my persona changes. And so we kept taking notes down and writing notes down and then writing lessons that Isabella was telling us because this was something that was completely new to us. And when we got done, I had found 42 lives. Carla had found 34 lives, and we found 29 lives that we passed through where we knew each other.
And well, there's bound to be more lives than that. Those are probably just the ones that left a large imprint.
Well, a couple things you just said there are true. Those are the only lives that Isabella says that we've had. I know if you've had other regression people on, they might differ in that, but
okay,
those
so
are the only lives we found. However, those all start over the last 6,000 years. And from the very beginning, Isabella kept saying that she's been with us for 6,000 years.
But where you found 49 and where the numbers differ,
There are some lives where we're not together.
Yeah, is it just that Carla lives longer?
Some of it is that way. Some of it was the periods of atonement in between lives for some people are different. That what you might call the past life review.
So what you're saying is Carla had to really atone a few times. She had to spend some time.
980 years on one when I poisoned Dave.
When you poisoned him?
He was my husband and I poisoned him.
So how
I paid for that though. I was actually poisoned in 2 other lives.
Really? So
So there is some truth to what you're saying though. A lot of times past life regression people, therapists will tell you a lot of times it's the traumatic memories that come up first because those have the biggest imprint.
Okay, so I really want to talk about this poisoning some more.
We can.
Yeah, so what was the circumstance around that? What was the time frame on the poison?
Well, Dave,
2700 BC.
2700 BC location?
Egypt.
Egypt, okay. All right. So, what would the poison have been in Egypt? I know in Greece they use hemlock, but Greece was close
Nightshade.
Nightshade, okay.
It was nightshade.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to sound like it wasn't my responsibility, because it was my responsibility. However, um, my husband, the Pharaoh, was talking to God and his spirit guide back then as well. Apparently, Davis had this gift for a while, a long while. We just didn't know it. And he decided that it was better to release the slaves, give the slaves some money and some land to work so that they could eat. And our son, who was only, I don't know, 13 or 16 at the time, his name was Den, he thought that his father was crazy and his father was taking his inheritance and he would be ruining everything for when he took over. So he started to work away at me, saying, there's something wrong with him. You need to work on him. This isn't right. We won't have any money. What's going to become of the slaves? And so I started asking my husband over and over again, are you sure that this is the right thing to do? What will become of us? Who is going to, we were taught that the slaves needed to be ruled. And he kept saying that no, this was the right thing to do. We needed to release the slaves because nobody needs to own another. And the slaves worked for whatever little money that we were going to give them so that they could get started. Well, then I became worried. Our son, kept at me saying that we have to do something. And there came a night where my son came in and handed me a glass of wine and said, give it to him. And it had a nightshade in it.
Okay.
And I knew it was wrong, but I did it.
So if you had to atone for, what would you said, 940 years?
980.
980 years. Now, your son is probably in your spirit tribe.
He is.
I imagine he had to do some pretty heavy atonement for that as well. Probably
well, I don't know, but I'm going to say yes.
I would say yes. I mean, because you came from it, yes, there was a bad side to you, but also there was a motherly protector side there as well. So,
thank you.
So I'm sure that that adds a little balance to the scales. His was kind of naive selfishness, and about that same time, Cyrus the Great would have been writing his what is it, the laws of Cyrus, which outlawed slavery at about the same time. A couple hundred years to either side of that.
Well, after my husband died, I was remorseful immediately. I knew it was the wrong thing to do. So I started to release the slaves. Yes, I started to release the slaves. I started to follow what he was doing. And our son put up with it for about 3 months or so. And then he came to me, I don't know if it was 3 months or 3 years, I can't remember. He came to me one day with my husband's was actually instantaneous, where mine wasn't. He had been giving me little bits here and there, and I didn't realize it. I just didn't feel good, so I suspected. And then one evening, he brought me a glass of wine, and that had a very large dose in it, and that did it. That set me over. But I knew it when I drank it, and I was prepared to go. Yeah. I was sorry for what I did, and it was time.
So Jared, I'm going to say something, because this is one of the lessons from Isabella, because you just kind of hinted at it. There are really 5 simple rules that they've been trying to teach us during all of these lives. And the 5 simple rules are: live without conceit, live without jealousy, live without selfishness, always be forgiving, and always love. Those are the main 5 rules, if you want to call them the shortened version of the 10 Commandments, but it's all about becoming loving. That's part of the lessons that we're supposed to learn in all of these lives. Part of the lessons is that God really created reincarnation from the beginning. If you talk a little bit about the second book, we start to talk about how we tried to reconcile some of our Catholic upbringing. But even in the first book, that reincarnation was really the plan from the beginning, learning lesson after lesson, trying to get this right, trying to learn the lessons of love so that we could actually return back to source, Tao, God, creator, whatever title you want to call that. We say God because we've always been raised that way. We were both raised Catholic, and Carla had a little Mormon stint in there she was talking about. But it's really that lesson that we have to make wise choices, and that these choices really affect our karma.
So you're learning all of this during meditation, or I thought that I read that you guys actually worked with Mr. Weiss.
We did. We took thousands of pages of notes trying to, and then we taught some meditation classes. And then we decided we needed to have formal training so that we could connect with more people that knew some of the same things we did. So we went to the Omega Institute, trained with Dr. Brian Weiss on past life regression hypnosis. And
But that was only 2 years ago, and this all started in 2014.
So you guys have been at this for a minute.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you guys stumbled onto it. What was it like the first time you met your spirit guide, your guardian angel? What was that like? Because I imagine I would have passed out, woke up, passed out again. The spirit guide would have had to hide in a corner while someone talked me through it, maybe a paper bag to breathe
Well, the
in.
first time Dave saw an angel, he was so scared because angels are huge, and he saw a big eye. And we were meditating, and we kept asking, the other girls and I were sitting at the table meditating with him. And we're like, what's going on? He said, I don't know what that was. Well, then he asked Isabella, and she said it was the eye of his angel. Because we all have an angel, and we all have, based on, Betsy and Jared, what are your birthdays?
I'm December 11, and Betsy is January 20.
So Betsy's a cusp Capricorn Aquarian. So if you're, what is you're in January though, so that makes you fall under Capricorn. And you would have a red angel because in a past life you had problems with forgiveness. So God gave you a red angel so that in this life you would try not to make the same mistake.
Let me tell you, he's been testing me.
Doesn't he?
Well,
that is a whole story for another day. But let me tell you, my forgiveness in this life has been thoroughly tested.
And that's what's going to happen, Betsy. That's how this actually does work.
It's so funny that you say that.
In your past life, you had issues. So in this life, you came under a sign that's going to have to deal with forgiveness. However, think about the reality here is you actually got an angel that's specifically there to help you with it. That's a beautiful thought.
I like it.
That's pretty cool.
What would
and Jared, you're a Scorpion?
No, I'm a Sagittarius.
Are you Sagittarian? Okay. So you actually have the same angel.
A red angel as well.
It's a red angel. Mm-hmm. And you need to work on keeping your forgiveness going.
Okay.
Don't focus on unforgiveness. Focus on the forgiveness because that's a little gift to help you.
Okay. So in a past life, that's one of the lessons I need to learn to.
Yes.
Forgive either yourself or others.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
I mean, you had to mention
I
yourself.
hadn't even thought about that first one.
Well, I guess I'll be born in December again next go round.
I need to keep working on that. It's clearly if I'm included in that, oh my gosh.
I mean, let's talk about the person who's wronged me the most is me.
There you go, Jared. That's the lesson.
All right.
But remember, only God gets to judge, and that's including yourself. You don't get to judge yourself. You just move on.
So
I can't
one
promise
thing
anything on
in
that.
my past life regression that was done by Heather. We spoke about her previously, and she's actually been on one of our shows.
Been on 2 of our shows.
2 of them, yes. One thing that I think blew me away was this whole male-female thing. Did you have past lives where you were a female?
We did not. I've always been a female, and Dave's always been a male. But
However,
we talked to a lot of people that have.
Oh, there are a bunch of lessons in these past lives that are interesting like that. We actually have a Viking life where we entered Scotland. We became part of the Scottish clan. In the next life, we were fighting England against Scotland. Then the next life, we were Scottish again fighting the English. In the next life, Carla actually became a Viking descent and was married into an English family. And what we've been told is that we will actually fight on every side of every issue, so that in reality we're fighting ourselves, and that's part of the karma. And that's the only way you can truly learn compassion. If you believe the Scottish are always right, then the next life you're going to come back as an Englishman fighting the Scottish.
And if you were a man abusing a woman, guess what? This time you come back as a woman, or vice versa. Compassion.
Wow.
I think that's that's a good idea to send the wife beater back as a woman. And then let me select her husband.
Yeah. God's pretty clever at this, I think. It doesn't always work exactly like that. I'm going to tell you a little quick story, because during some of these experiences, I was able to watch the past life review that my father had in heaven. And at atonement, I have to give you a little background story. My father in a past life was a slave trader, meaning he split families apart and he chained men into the bottom of his boat. And in his last life, he spent the last 20 years of his life chained to a wheelchair because of Parkinson's. And so it may not be that you're going to be a slave in each life, but somewhere you're going to be a slave to something.
You're going to, part of his atonement was that lack of freedom.
Correct.
Okay. That I can see it. And
if you've been controlling in the past, you might end up an alcoholic in this life, letting alcohol control you. If you've been, extremely selfish, it may be that the last lesson you're going to have to learn in this life is how to share yourself with somebody else.
What if you tell inappropriate jokes at exactly the wrong time way too often?
What's your karmic will then?
I know. Am I going to be a mute or?
I'm sure there's a punishment somehow for you, Jared. But we try not to say karma is about punishment. It's about learning lessons.
Be born a natural engineer and have no sense of humor.
You might, and you may have to actually end up sitting at a concert with a really poor comedian.
Oh, over and over. Every comic show I go to is a bomb. I'm just like, oh, this is rough. That'd be bad for the comic too. Then I'd have to atone again for ruining his
show for heckling. Yeah. You got it.
Now,
so do you know, between lives, when you go back during your atonement, do we know what we're up against, what lesson we're going to be learning in this life before we come to the next life?
I'm going to say you're going to know some of what you're facing.
So you do part of your atonement on the other side, and then part of it is also here on the terrestrial realm.
Well, you're going to have to overcome it on this terrestrial realm. Whatever you did, you're going to go to your past life review. They're going to show you the compassion, or show you what you've done to others, so you hopefully develop some compassion. And then you're going to come back and have to face some of those same issues again.
So, is there a fast track? Like,
Carla keeps asking the same question. Is there a way to get off of this? Is there a way to get off the wheel? Because we're spinning through this. We sometimes joke about it too, and we say, I've had 42 lives. How slow a learner am I?
Right. Like, if you experience like a really rough go at this, like, is that it? Like, you fast track, you're like, give it all to me this time, all of it. I want all of it. I'm going to learn all the lessons all at once. And then, moving on.
You're going to move on, man. And yes, some of that happens during that past life review where the next life is being planned. And we're a little different than some people, because some people believe you get to choose all these lessons yourself and you're smart enough to figure it out. But the reality is it's set up for you. You're given a birth sign that's going to put you in a certain category, give you a special angel to help you. You're placed in various traits. Now, a lot of your personality follows you through, but part of it is set up for you. You're going to return to some of your same soul group for a couple reasons. First of all, your soul group also is going to include those people who have been close to you. So they're either family mates or actually karmic mates, because you need to come back with those people that you created karma.
Yeah, you may have to.
Hard to atone if they aren't here.
If they're not here.
And and that means you may have to hang out up there longer for them. Like, say,
yes, bingo.
Say the difference
you
is.
Got it.
Say,
get back on cycle, because you might have died young and you may need to wait a little while.
Well, let's say back in the times of the pharaohs, she kills you, you pop up into heaven, they do a quick review, and they're like, you were doing good things, you were releasing the slaves, we're going to send you back down again. Bam, you get shot back down. She lives another few months and then pops up, has to atone. You cycle a few lives, but then maybe some of that at the end of her atonement has to wait around to where it can line up to where you guys meet up on whatever level it is, whether she's a grandchild that helps you in a wheelchair, or she's, part of that atonement, or she's on equal grounds where she can be a friend or a spouse or a neighbor, a dog trainer, and you've got a really crappy dog, whatever it is,
That's exactly the way it works.
Yeah,
exactly.
It makes me think of Athena. One of the lives, we've all been kings and queens. We've all been saints and sinners. So if I say I was a queen once, big deal, everybody's been one. And half of the queens we've been, we never heard of anyway. But I was a queen in Greece once, and I was only 21, and I had no idea what I was doing. And my commanders encouraged me to go to battle with a woman named Ona that was a queen of Smyrna in Turkey. So I allowed my men to go, and unfortunately they were all wiped out. But before that happened, there was one of my guards I had a little fancy for. His name was Gregorius. And he was stationed in the around the corner from me, so I would see him often. And the night before the battle, I had my my lady in waiting send him up to me. So we spent a little while together, and then he was killed the next day in battle. But don't you know, 9 months later, I had his son, and it was him all over again.
Oh.
See, that was quick.
Yeah, so, well, he was, especially back in those days, soldiers were generally, back in the days of Greece, I mean, he was probably just trying to earn some form of citizenship or just a trade.
I don't know. You wouldn't believe the details. In fact, there's 21 of our stories in The Gift of Past Lives with Mother Isabella and Elizabeth, and they're quite detailed. We had to remove a lot of the details because that book is, large enough. But Dave has the ability to go in and actually like live that life. So the details are unbelievable. He was not trying to get citizenship that night. I will just tell you that.
Well, not that night.
Okay.
That night he got citizenship. We'll just put it that way.
There you go.
Good on you,
So
Dave.
Dave, you get these details through meditation, or did you get these details through a past life regression?
I get them through meditation.
So you're just able to meditate deeply into deeper than most
into a
people
past
can.
life. And actually, I one of the little girls that died in the Mayan time has a role for me, and she took me to some of my first past lives. She passes me over when I die, and
He's one of his guides.
one of my guides that's not my main spirit guide, not Isabella. But Shanta taught me to look at these things, and I can't even explain it except to start with, it was like watching an old movie, and then the movies get faster, and now I can literally sit down and watch thousands of lives go zipping through and just stop and say, I want this one, and it comes to me. And I'm literally there in 20 minutes, and I can be in that state for 2 or 3 hours if I need to, and go through a life. And if you want to call it channeling, I don't like to say that because it's really my experience, so it's not somebody else. But Carla will just take notes and type and write the stories down, and things happen, and we have a whole past life in no time.
So I'll bet that ability helps you reflect on more than just thinking about who you are now, but like if you can look at, say, just the very last past life, it can help you reflect on maybe where you should focus energy now. If you can dive in deep like that, if you can gather that much data about it, because you may have to you really may be down here to work on multiple things on different levels, fine details of yourself.
Correct. And we've actually, when we were doing the past lives and taking all the notes, we actually took notes on each past life at the end, and the lessons we should have learned, the things we did wrong, lessons everybody can learn from this. Again, the lessons are all based on that conceit and selfishness and jealousy. If you start to make choices that are not selfish, choices that are not conceited, not jealous, you can start to overcome this karma, because then the choices start to become loving and forgiving and compassionate. And that's really the lesson is, we're infinite beings that are not going to really die, but we can overcome all these lessons by our own choices and free will here. And we can actually get to the point where we can go back home to God, where we have no needs, wants, those issues anymore. We don't have to have a life that's suffering the next life or concerned the next life. And there's so many people that we talk to that their concerns are they've already done something wrong in this life and it's going to force them to come back. Well, the truth is, start to make the changes now. And those changes won't affect you in your next life, or maybe you can actually be done.
I want to know what I've got to do to get a lesson like how to be a better race car driver next time, or professional fisherman.
Or how to be a multi-millionaire.
Yes, professional fisherman, race car driver, multimillionaire.
You've already done that. Everybody's been rich. Everybody's been poor. That's how you learn compassion.
But if I crack the code on how to have to be that next time to learn a lesson and never learn it and keep repeating that.
The problem is if you are not being your best self and you're driving recklessly and you hit the pole and your life is cut short, you didn't have the chance to learn all the lessons you were supposed to in this life, and you're coming back because you didn't finish.
Ooh.
But I need to learn to not drive recklessly.
Mhm.
Continue. Now, how would fishing tie in? You know the Sunday morning TV shows?
The Sunday morning fishing show.
Yeah, the guy who backs his boat in the water, talks about it, tries out new lures. How do I mess that into it? I've got to
Yeah.
stumble.
I think you could choose to do that.
I've got to
You
stumble
can
my
choose
way
to
into
enjoy nature and fishing. It's okay.
I enjoy both those things. I'm just not handsome enough, good enough to have a Sunday morning TV show doing it.
TV show. I get it.
Yeah.
But you have a late night podcast.
I do.
That's
I do.
true. That's true.
I
So
do.
We
you're
could
already on
fish.
you're already on the path.
I'm on the path.
could
I've
do-
just got to start
We can do
fishing. on
night
my-
fishing.
Yeah. Now okay. I've got two other questions. One, you say you can recognize Carla when you regress. Does she look the same as she does now, or is it kind of your mind's eye sees through the difference?
Your mind's eye, I'd say, sees through the difference, and I always tell her it's something in the eyes. Now, from Ruby Donaldson to now, there's a lot in common because she was blonde with short hair and those kind of things,
And the eye color.
and the eye color. And there's a lot of times that Carla has steel blue eyes in many of these lives. However, she's also had dark hair, dark eyes. She's been black, I don't know how many times.
14.
Yeah, I think that's close to what mine was. So, again, you really do live every side, and we've been Asian, and certainly she looks Asian in that life, but I know it's her.
So you kind of see through it. You kind of you recognize her even though she may look different.
Yes, the mannerisms and the traits are the same, and that's some of those things that the researchers in reincarnation actually find. It's another interesting little topic. Again, I was a physician when this all started, and so some of the research that's out there by Ian Stevenson, Jim Tucker, Jim Matlock, they've gone out and they all do research on children with spontaneous memory, because it's hard to coach a 2 or 3 year old who says, you weren't my mother in the last life. And they have 2,000 or 3,000 cases like that are verifiable as much as possible, that these kids have returned as somebody else. They have very interesting stories. They have stories where the kid says, I was born in such and such a town, and my wife's name was Jean, and I need to find Jean. She lives in a blue house. And the parents actually take the kid and drive their 3-year-old over to the next town, and they drive up and down the streets, and the kid says, that's the house I used to live in. The kid runs up the stairs, knocks on the door. A lady answers the door, and he says, Jean, do you remember me? And her husband died when she was 35 and has come back, and it's 10 or 11 years later. And he says, Jean, did you find the money I buried upstairs under the floorboard? And he runs up the stairs. He turns to the right because he knows where their bedroom was. He runs and he points to the floorboard, and they pull it up, and there's $4,000 under the floorboard.
Now imagine being that lady.
Yes,
She's got to be
that's hard.
God-struck standing there going, she's looking at all the adults in the room like, what is going on?
Correct.
Imagine that.
How do we explain that? Those kind of cases they call verifiable.
Yeah, well, I
and
would
so-
imagine that is. That,
Because how would a 3-year-old can't make that up and can't even be coached to do that?
well, yeah, how would a 3-year-old even think that there's something under the floorboards?
Correct.
Realistically, the 3-year-old probably thinks the floorboard is the end of existence. There's no recognition of under that.
Yeah.
Another question I have. This one's might be a little more complicated, but our world has gotten safer and more comfortable. It just in every direction. It's safer to live in. There's less violence, more food. I don't have to compete with a wolf to eat a gazelle, all of that stuff. Does that make, how does that impact the lessons? Does it make it easier to learn some of the not committing violence lessons, but harder maybe on some of the gluttony style lessons?
Oh,
Okay.
the hardest lessons are up here.
Yes, the hardest lessons are up there. You're right.
Remember, I got to remember not to drive too fast.
But
Not to blow out a shoulder on a cast. Those are my
we can look at
lessons.
this a couple different ways, Jared. We could say, as a world, maybe we are actually learning some of our lessons. We've learned that cooperation works better.
Oh, that's a good point.
Okay, so if we're working as a society, because there's actually some, if you want to call it group karma that occurs, we're working as a society to become a better society, less prejudiced, all of those kind of things. Less war occurs. As a group, we may be approaching where more of us are starting to return home.
Mm.
Whoa. We're aging out.
Well, everyone is repeatedly learning these lessons, and maybe they're starting to stick. And not just that, but someone coming back to work on a little bit of a lesson may have from their tribe group a child that they then pass on some of that furtherance, but that child's also learning a little bit of the next step, and cycle repeats.
And there's some truth to that too, Jared. We talk about this a little bit in our first book. There is some karma that comes from our parents.
Mm-hmm.
We pass on some of that to our children because we're teaching them how to act, how to be. And as we change how we teach them, then that karma is not passed on to them. Certainly, we argue about group karma as a theory some of the time, but the reality is, if the Christians have been fighting the Muslims and the Muslims have been fighting the Christians again for centuries, when will we finally say we just disagree on a couple things? It doesn't need to be that it goes to war. And
Definitely.
and some of that's not happening now.
Yeah, in some places it's moving towards that, and in some places it's really not. And it floats back and forth, and it's weird. It seems like in the most accepting countries of the other is where you have kind of an underground group that's the least acceptance. And then in the middle countries where there's only semi-acceptance, where they're just like, everyone seems to run on the same plane because it's recognizable. But in a super accepting country like, say, Saudi Arabia, it is super accepting of Christianity on the open level. We don't know what happens on the back streets, but on the open. But then you've got this underground where kind of a lot of that violence that we have witnessed over a while kind of rose up. Or, around the Caucasus Mountains. But they're still coming out of being a part of the USSR. I think they're still getting their sea legs under them. But yeah, that's an interesting thought.
And all of that is related to karma and how we're dealing and learning.
Yeah, and another thing, most religions tend to be born out of a meditation.
True. And if
Muhammad was meditating.
Our second book, Hell No, Reincarnation, certainly mysticism of some kind has been present for 6,000 years. We have, if it's Jewish, it's the Kabbalah. There's Christian mystics. There, Catholic is Thomas Merton is probably the author out there that does the most.
Rumi.
Rumi for the Muslims is a mystic. Wrote all the poetries on love. You start to see that this is the area that's going to bring people and pull them closer together. It's the shared mystical experience, not the shared dogma, because it's the dogma and the rules and the whatever that religion has, the whether you have to go to church on Sunday or not rules. that actually splits people apart. Those are all rules based on controlling the people that go to that church versus teaching them love the neighbor as yourself, which is a lesson really in almost every religion.
So it's kind of the government side of religion that's ruining it. The spiritual side isn't ruining it, but kind of the governmental laws, rules, maintaining control and gaining real estate.
Yeah. If you believe you're the only 144,000 that are going to make it, everybody else is less than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's those. Not to disparage them, because I know a handful of Jehovah's Witnesses, but that's kind of a crazy thought to think that only 144,000, and that's not of living today, that's of all existence, is all that gets in. So what, that's
That
a
means
blip?
a whole bunch of them don't get in.
That means almost nobody gets in. If you think about at least 80,000 years that modern human has walked this earth, that means that almost nobody, I mean, you would go
Well, don't forget, we are repeating over and over, so we're all kind of the same people again.
And maybe there's only 144,000 of us. Maybe, there has to be more than that.
There's at least 7 billion.
Yeah, there has to be at least 7 billion. I mean, maybe China doesn't count. And then there's
that brings the numbers down a lot lower. Yeah.
Yes, it does. That shaves it in half. Matter of fact, maybe just parts of China does. Take out China and India. What is there? 30,000 people on the earth, something like that. Anyway,
so hell and heaven. Do you believe in a hell?
No.
No. And I'll run through that the short argument really quickly, just so. Historically, if we look back at hell, it started as Sheol, which for the Jews was the land of atonement, where everybody went, good or bad. Hades, which was the Greek version, everybody went, good or bad. Now, later in Hades history, they start to divide people up, but the original Hades was just where dead people went. And then we have the Bible stories about the Valley of Gehenna, which is literally the name of the ditch outside of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem was built on the top of the mountain, and all their excrement and sewage went down and emptied into the Valley of Gehenna. The judges at that time, which is 500-600 years before the Jesus time, the judges, before there were kings, when they had illegitimate children, they used to take them to the Valley of Gehenna to kill their illegitimate children. That's a part of Jewish history. And they would set them on fire because there was all this excrement and trash and stuff there. And so the Valley of Gehenna was a historical place outside of Jerusalem where things burned and trash was dumped. And then we had Hades, and then we had Sheol. And when the King James Bible was written, King James said, change all of them to say the word hell, because Dante used hell. And my wife happens to be German. And the German god Helya was the god of the pagan underworld. And so they named hell after the god of the pagan underworld in Germany and put it in the Bible.
Wow.
Yeah, Sheol was also a landfill. It was the place you didn't want to go to. Yeah, that's where
all the Jews went there.
Yeah, well, it's the place you didn't want to live, because it was literally where you throw the refuse out.
And nothing happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
However, it was also considered the land of atonement, which is, again, an interesting theory if you want to look at it. The Catholic Church used to take payments. They lit candles for people after they were already dead.
What do they call that? Buying
indulgences.
Yeah, indulgences. That was part of Martin Luther's split.
Absolutely.
That's correct. That's Martin Luther's split. You got it. And it was part of that is, even though supposedly you're already dead, it was okay if you paid enough money, you could actually get people into heaven.
Yeah. Or you could pay for your own sins or possible future sins. So you could, let's say you're a married man.
You could prepay?
You can.
You could
Yeah.
prepay.
Say
You
you're a
just took
married
your credit card in.
you're a married man and you planned on having a little outer marital affair. You could go pay the church in pre-atonement for this affair you were going to have, and
then you go straight to heaven. It's great.
then your slate's wiped clean. And some of those atonements were paid in warfare, some with money, some with service to the church. It was a wild time, and it drove Europe into a civil war.
Correct.
It caused one of the longest civil wars there's ever been. And it happened all over Europe. Real big in Germany, but all over. We can go. That was the Protestant Catholic War.
So those kind of lessons we learned during meditation, which are the lessons
That is insane.
Which are the lessons of history, which are the karma that we're still all dealing with. And this is another one of those strange thoughts, if you want to think about them. When we pollute the earth and we destroy things and we stripping things out, not only are you leaving this world to your children, you're really going to leave it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And yourself over and over again. Definitely. Well, before we close this, I want to spend a few minutes and go over some of the questions that some of the people have mentioned, and I want to start out with Heather's questions. Now, Heather, of course, is me and Betsy's regressive Sifu, I guess we'd call her, our dojo master.
I'm sorry, Heather. Let me just apologize.
Okay. Well, there's nothing to apologize for. Okay. Now, she did ask about have you regressed with children, and you touched on that a little bit earlier with 3-year-olds recognizing stuff and things like that.
Yeah,
that wasn't regression.
Yeah, those children have spontaneous memories. We don't regress children. You need a certain maturity level.
I'm going to come out and say it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Jared, if we can regress you or not. That's another question.
I'm going to come out and say it. When she tried to regress me, I had to sit still for a few minutes. I've been around a couple children.
And so, no, we don't regress children, and we don't recommend that anybody does, anybody under 16.
I think what she was asking, that she was talking about the studies with children. I don't think she's regressed any,
okay.
But I think she was talking about those studies you talked about. Also, she asked about the Akashic records.
Okay.
During PLLBL regressions. I don't know what those are, but
Life between lives.
Yes. Past life regression, where they include part of that time of atonement or the time between lives. The Akashic record is what
metaphorical.
Yes, the metaphorical book, if you want to call it, or it is the record of all of your past lives. Past life regression really works under hypnosis. Meditation actually works by going to that same place. The brain waves actually do change and you start to access the subconscious. Those memories are actually carried in your subconscious. That's where the past life regression people are getting those memories. When you do meditation, you're actually accessing the Akashic record or your subconscious memory that follows you from your past life. So there is a whole thing out there that is recording all of your reactions and all of your actions ever since your soul first incarnated. It's part of our evolutionary protective function. It's kind of like if you touch something that's hot, you know it's hot and it burns you. that's recorded in your subconscious. So the next time you touch something hot, your hand pulls back faster. That's where the science of part of this goes. And so if you actually record in your subconscious all of your past life experiences or the Akashic record, then you're actually able to respond faster the next time when you're put into that same situation.
So the Akashic record is stored in your subconscious, but it's when you're like in life between lives, it's
actually stored in your soul.
It's stored.
That's
in your
why
soul.
we have a soul.
Oh, okay.
There's no you wouldn't even need a soul if you didn't have to carry your essence and your memory with you from life to life.
Whoa. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, that's a lot. That is a lot to think about. And then, so those were Heather's two main questions, and she can't come join us live. She has an appointment tonight to do something, but she will be.
I wish she could be there because I love talking to other people who do past life regression.
Yeah, well, it'd be fun to do a show where we gather all of them on here, and I just sit back and drink it all in, and then once in a while drop a bad joke, and then sit back, stir the pot with the stick.
My past life regression was profound. I still find myself just trying to unpack it. Like I'll still see things that I'm like, now that makes sense, but I'm still trying to unpack it. So I can see why you wouldn't want to with anyone. I think I'm probably still too young. Maybe I should have waited another 15 years of life experience, but I can see why it would be life altering to have that paradigm shift as a 16-year-old even. That's really young.
It's really young. And again, since a lot of the past life memories that come through are traumatic, until they have enough maturity to deal with watching themselves potentially die or somebody they care about die, and they haven't even experienced it in this life yet, throwing them into that situation is really unfair.
Yeah. Now, I do have more questions here.
I'm ready.
I think it'd be hard to do it with children. Well, one, getting them to go under would be impossible. I don't know. There's probably a drug, a pill for that, but that's not fair to say. Anyways, okay, so we have Laura asks, is there spirit animals? Now, Laura is I'm going to be gentle here, an animal fanatic. And so is there spirit animals? Is there that connection that you have with a pet? Does that carry on?
Do you want to answer that, Carla, or you want me to?
Well, first I'll say that when I was Chinese, I had a tiger, and I never remember the year. What year was it, Dave?
200.
You had a pet tiger?
I had a tiger. I had a pet tiger, and that tiger does come to me every so often.
Like that guy from Oklahoma? What was his name, Betsy?
Stop it. She's not Joe Exotic.
Oh.
She's only had a tiger once.
It was in a cage.
I've been yearning for one ever since.
But it was a white Bengal, and I do see the white Bengal every so often. So your past animals do come to you, and they do have a place where they remain.
Huh. That's...
So yes, animals will come and follow you along. Your new dog, Betsy, someday you will reunite with your new dogs.
Laura, you just made Laura very happy. Made her whole night.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, yes, definitely.
We'll even talk about another thing here that's related to that, and there's a lot of discussions on many of the reincarnation experiences that people have. Isabella has been very careful to tell us this. Animals do not have to reincarnate. You don't have to become an animal. If you're really bad, Jared, you're not coming back as a cockroach in the next life.
So lucky.
I think I was a
First
cockroach.
of all, these animals, they live and love on instinct. They don't have a way to record the lessons. They don't need to learn lessons. They're already created for their purpose, and they come here. If it's your pet cat, the pet cat has done its job and returned back, because part of its job is supporting the environment. All the animals support the environment. There is literally some reasonable lessons, if you read the Bible, that we're given some sort of dominion. If you could return as an animal, then we could all suddenly have to be vegetarians, because we couldn't kill another soul. That's one of those spiritual laws. And a soul that was an animal couldn't be killed to eat.
Or a plant.
Or a plant, because if we can be an animal, we could be a plant, we could be a rock.
I imagine there'd be an extra atonement for eating long pig.
Your karmic wheel is spinning the wrong direction, Jared.
I'm just saying. Now, Laura had also another question, and I think this goes back to the family groups. She says, is that why you meet people sometimes and you feel like you've known them forever or met them before?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely. That's a very common experience, and it's one that you should think about, like when you walk into the grocery store and you are suddenly rude to the clerk who's checking you out, especially COVID time when everybody's uptight now.
Uh-huh.
If you're rude to that clerk that you just met at the grocery store, did you just collect karma with that clerk? And you're never going to see them again, but you're going to come back in the next life, because now they're part of your soul group, because you've now created karma with them.
That, or you may be a
may have been your wife in the past life.
A past life, and comes back then. Now, on the animal thing, that, Betsy, there's little mites that live specifically on your eyelids. You know that.
So gross.
That is so true.
Those animals do not wait for me anywhere.
Someone posted a close-up of their face earlier.
I can't.
So, Jared, you do not come back as a mite on anybody's eyelid ever again.
Okay, I started out as that. Another question. Janice said she wants to find out what her angel is. What's a Libra? The angel for a Libra, like a
Libra is notoriously dealing with jealousy all of the time. So in a past life, Janice probably had a problem with jealousy. So again, God made her a Libra for a reason, because Libras have a problem with jealousy.
I thought with that it would come out with meanness and being tough, but jealousy. Okay.
Jealousy.
So that's a green angel, and she may, in fact, if she meditates long enough, start to see green. That's something that people do in their sign.
We need to go visit, see if maybe she's got extra green in her house too.
Now remember though that the spectrum of angels, the background is purple. So sometimes you will see the purple color mixed with your color and you'll think it's a different color. Regardless, you stick with your astrological sign.
So the background of angels is purple.
It is.
Correct. They are in the spectrum of light above purple. And so literally it's the rainbow colors, and purple is the bottom darkest color in the rainbow.
Like the ultraviolet, I think it is.
Yes, it's right next to that, somewhere in that, Jared.
Okay.
So, Carla, what about Cancer? We had one other person message me about Cancer.
Cancers fall under conceit. They have a pink angel.
Okay.
So in a past life, they had a problem, and it goes two ways. If you read up on the astrological signs, interestingly enough, the book that we're getting ready to publish in a few months is called The Manual. And it actually has all of the astrological signs, the traits and the archetypes and elementals that God uses to create each of us. And
Oh, I can't wait to get that one.
So you were
Mhm.
conceited, so you got sent back as an ugly crab. That's how you do it.
well, cancers have a problem thinking they're always right. And where does that fall? It falls under conceit.
Uh-huh.
So that's a
right.
pink angel.
That's
And
right.
it,
Carla, tell him which angel legions those fall under, because people will know those names.
oh, okay. So the green angel is Raphael. The
Okay.
yellow angel is Mario. The pink angel is Shamuel. And the red angel is Uriel.
So if you've done any reading on angels, those names will
Very familiar.
be familiar. Now, you may not actually have Raphael, because Raphael has an entire legion of angels, but he would be, interestingly enough, angels don't really consider themselves archangels because they don't have any hierarchy. But Raphael is the angel that everybody's heard of, but in his legion, all of the angels are red.
But more importantly,
Wow.
if you hear the word that you were conceited under a certain sign, so what? We're all something. Um, the idea is to overcome it. Don't take it to heart. Don't take it personally. It's just a word, and don't do it.
And I've got to forgive. All
So
right.
Jared, every time you make a decision, you have to think, is it conceited, selfish, or jealous? If you think you're smart enough and you can drive a little faster and you're just a little bit too conceited, you're going to hit the pole.
And then come back as a better race car driver, Fisherman. All right. Laura asks, Dave, how has this affected how you treat your patients? That's a good question.
Oh, that's a great question.
It's well, for a period of time I was still practicing. I had open heart surgery in January and retired this year. So to start with, it was incredible experience. Not only I had the weight loss, which really motivated many patients, and I would explain meditation was helping and those kind of things. And so my patients had blood sugars dropping and they were losing 40, 50 pounds and those kind of things. It made me extremely compassionate about everybody's spiritual journey. Um, I had a Lutheran minister who was one of my patients, and we had incredibly open discussions about issues that he was having. And as I was discussing those, his health problem with his foot started to finally heal. I had a Muslim patient with a wound on their foot, and they wanted to spend their whole goal in life was to get to Mecca and do the pilgrimage. With a wound on their foot, they couldn't.
Yeah,
so we spent months healing his wound, talking about making his pilgrimage, getting special shoes designed, etc., so that he could go. We looked at all the exceptions and what kind of accommodations he could do, officially being Muslim, to be able to make his journey. Those kind of experiences I became more open to because I was willing to discuss anybody's view with anything, because I wasn't going to judge them on their religion or any of their other issues. So those things became things we just talked about honestly.
So you kind of became a spiritual healer, not just a mechanical healer.
I'd say yes. And that's still that's why we taught meditation, because we wanted to reach out to people and say, really it's a matter of getting control of yourself and making these smart decisions.
Huh.
And can I just say that Dave is one of the purest, nicest people you will ever meet. His patients loved him. They loved him before, this, and after. And I believe that's part of the reason that he has this wonderful gift, because he is very pure and he judges nobody.
I can tell you that comes across in this conversation that comes across almost immediately when you start talking to them. A very, not to go stroking your ego in front of you, but
No, we don't want to work on my ego because the conceit thing is going to bring me back.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. I've got to forgive you for not wanting me to work on it. Michelle asks, "Are soulmates real?"
Yeah.
All right, that's a really good question. Certainly.
Talk about intendeds first, Dave.
All right, we'll start from the beginning. Certainly, in the beginning, there wasn't just one Adam and Eve. The human population was spread out across the entire country in sections. There are many original couples. There's also someone out there for everyone that you're intended to meet. And it's part of, so we call them intendeds. We don't call them soulmates. Soulmates is a role chosen by God for two people, not necessarily man and woman, two people that have loved each other extremely well over many, many lives, where they have complete male and feminine side, so they're complete as a together. Now, that's why this soulmate issue becomes important. God asks people in their last incarnation if they want to be soulmates, which means binded together so that you can emulate love and completeness. It's sort of like a beacon of love up in heaven. That's what a soulmate is. Your intended is somebody you're supposed to meet. It could develop into a soulmate. Your intended you could also develop karma with. So you have to realize that that person that you're intended to meet could be someone you could develop into a soulmate relationship after your last incarnation.
Or it might just be like a best friend in that time, or
it could be in some life that you're just best friends,
or possibly a worst enemy in that time. If forgiveness is something you have to learn,
absolutely. So you can be asked to be a soulmate. So certainly there are people that are specifically matched up to meet you that will fulfill a lot of your needs. However, nobody is created incomplete. So no one needs to be controlled, owned, or needs another person to be complete. It's really they complement you.
All right, I think we have one last question here. Did we cover the Scorpio angel?
The Scorpio angel is the same as yours.
Oh, another green one?
Mm-hmm. They're in groups of 3.
Okay.
So the Leo, Virgo, Libra is the angel of jealousy, and that is Raphael's legion. Scorpion, Sagittarius, and Capricorn all fall under unforgiveness angel, which is the red angel, and that is Uriel. Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries fall under selfishness. That's the yellow angel or Mariel's legion. And then Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer have the pink angel. That's the angel of conceit, and that would be Shamuel.
And I want you to remember the 5 simple rules are conceit, selfishness, jealousy, and unforgiveness, and always choose love. That's why you're specifically given an angel to assist you in overcoming that particular problem.
So God gives you an angel and a spirit guide to help you. I mean, we come down here not by ourselves, and then we have our family mates. So we're not down here alone. We really do have a lot of help. It's whether we choose to take it.
Yeah, and I could see, well, you can also see how this could run off the tracks, as if you come down as a family group, say you get a parent who falls into alcohol, and then the children fall into alcohol, and then possibly grandchildren fall, and the trauma passes down, and you've got to try to work that trauma out of the family.
There's the karma, and you got to work through that. And so if you were an alcoholic father and you come back 2 generations later in the same family, you may still have an alcoholic father.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we follow the same bloodlines. If you're a child and then, previously 2 lives ago, you were your own grandfather, you're following the bloodline. You're following those traits.
You may get those traumas inflicted on you that you inflicted on your child, or
Absolutely.
oh wow, yeah, that's
Henry VIII. Henry VIII created his own church, and he taxed everybody. And then in his next life, he was a peasant that had to pay all the taxes that he had implemented the life before, not thinking. So you have to be careful.
But did he have women beheading him every so often?
Yeah.
Well, those stories are actually in the manual.
Well, we're gonna definitely have to get your books and do some reading on this. This is some very interesting, very deep stuff. It brings it even deeper because we had dipped our toes in the water talking about the kind of your tribes or your family groups, but this goes deeper once you explore that thought more, and you explore how this has changed the earth and made that this karmic advancement has possibly made the earth a better and safer place to live, and maybe karmic failures. Maybe when you have steps back, like prior to World War I, Europe was this open society, and then World War I kicked off, and then everyone kind of retreated into their nation states again, and you had to have papers to ride a train across an imaginary line, So those are really interesting thoughts to think that a karmic will may play a larger role in that than you think about.
Road karma.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think we're coming up on the end of the time.
Man.
This has been a great show.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and we'd
I'm
like to.
super excited. I've ordered all of the books. I can't wait for when does the manual come out?
It will probably be
March
or April. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. That has Betsy time enough to read these books to me because I'm an illiterate ape.
Story time.
That's right. She can tuck me in every night.
Jared, if you email us your address, we will send you a copy of The Gift of Past Lives and Hell No Reincarnation.
Perfect. I will email you the address as soon as we're done here for sure.
And also, I just want to tell you that we had a life where Dave's name was Jared.
Really?
And in another life, my name was Elizabeth. So,
which is Betsy is short for Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Oh.
Cool.
So, what was in your past life where your name was Jared? What were you? What
did you have an exorbitant amount of hair?
My head was shaved in that life. If that helps.
Really?
It was in a scene.
Under that hat.
Oh, I'm bald as a bat under
But
this bat.
that's what it looked like too.
Yeah.
There was no hair for Jared. He was shaved.
Oh. Was you
very interesting?
Was you a fisherman or a race car driver?
No, it was a few thousand years ago. So it's
yes. Isn't it in the Mormon religion? There's a guy named Jared, and then a guy with a hard name to pronounce. So they just call him the brother of Jared.
I don't know.
That I'm not sure about.
Isn't that it, Betsy?
Jared, from a Mormon perspective, some of this is there is some Mormon teaching that's a little bit like some of this because they believe that there's a pre-existence of the soul in heaven. They believe
it's preordained.
There's some predestiny, and that they return, and that they're continuing to live on in heaven as they get remarried or they're married to the same people still there forever. So there is some issues there that are at least interesting parallels.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask Dad about that brother of Jared thing. He was on a minute.
You'll have to. I'm not a Mormon expert. I can't help you there.
There was a guy named Jared. He was kind of mediocre, but his awesome brother who had this super long name. It's like
There was also a guy who did commercials for Subway. So I don't know.
well, okay. He did not do awesome stuff. You don't go to high schools and touch the students. But anyways, but his name was so big that they just called him the brother of Jared because that was easier than trying to say his name. But
I can't remember. I do remember that, but I'm drawing a blank. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, this is the back in the Nephites and Lamanites.
Listen, I say we make that acceptable again today because some kids' names these days are terrible to pronounce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there might be karma with the way you name some people.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you name somebody Moon Baby, you're gonna come back and they're gonna name you Sasquatch. It's just gonna happen.
Hey, can that be my folks? Sasquatch? That's a name I can get behind. Yeah, but hey, thanks so much for coming on. This has been a really enjoyable conversation.
It was fun.
It's
super eye-opening.
Yeah, we need to have you on again. We want to read the books, get more familiarized, and focus in on some things because this was kind of a scattershot, and I really want to focus in on some stuff.
No, you did great. The questions were great.
Yep, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, I want to play around with some of these deeper because I love history and playing around with these historical thoughts of it is awesome.
Now we can talk all about history of religion if you want to, because part of that's in the second book.
Okay. I will send you guys the address and then
Betsy's too.
Yeah,
Betsy's too.
She lives next door down the street a ways, but
books with her.
yeah, but you could, but yeah, I can send you Betsy's address, or you can send them both here. But also, then we can also send something back. That way, we'll have your address, and that would be outstanding. But thank you so much for coming on. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure to meet you both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It
You
was
too,
great,
Betsy.
Betsy.
Love the fingernails.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Thank you very much, guys. And for everyone listening, we will see you next week. Great show. I had super fun. Super fun.
Have a great week.
Yes. Have a great
You
week.
too. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving.